Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about building the base before you chase the miles. So, kind of trails method I put together, and then the hierarchy of needs for hikers, which is super important. So we'll go over what that means as we get into it. If you don't know me, my name is Lee. I am the owner of Trailside Fitness. I started Trailside Fitness in 2017 as I prepped for the Pacific Crest Trail, just for recognizing that there was a lot of need for hikers to need a good program to follow. There was a lot of injuries, and I felt like with my education and background, I was perfect to kind of fill that gap. So I hiked the PCT in 2018, and then most recently the Pacific Northwest Trail in 2024. So Glacier National Park to the Pacific Ocean. It's definitely a more wild ride than the PCT. So if you're looking for an adventure, highly recommend it. um, I'm also a physical therapist assistant. So a little over a decade doing that, as well as personal training. And then I'm also a CrossFit certified coach and nutrition coach as well. So lots of good information. Everything I do is pretty much geared toward long distance hikers. So if someone's coming to me just looking to gain 10 pounds of muscle, lose 10 pounds of fat, I'm probably not the guy for you. I'm super specific with what I do for clients. And I've been there. I've been injured on trail before. So on the PCT, for about 100 miles or so. So just outside of Wrightwood, I had a really bad calf issue. My hiking partner was actually having to stand on my calf to give it a deep tissue massage to release, which was miserable. But after a week or 10 days, that kind of resolved and I was good to go. Most recently on the Pacific Northwest Trail, I had a shin issue. I trained leading up to it, and there were just some circumstances a little bit outside of my control with mileage and water stops, forcing some longer miles. And I kind of gambled and pulled up with a shin injury. I was almost in tears when I reached out to Morgan at Blaze Physio, convinced my hike was about to end. And she said, "Nope, you're fine. You'll be good to go in 2 or 3 days." And she was absolutely right. So I've been there. I understand the mindset of being injured and what that feels like. And then kind of the community and the support to lean into when things do go wrong to get back on track. So with that, I've created the Trails method, which is really just a fancy acronym for total assessment, resilient foundations, adventure specific strength, intelligent conditioning, lifestyle integration, and then sustainable self-care. We'll simplify it a little bit for you here. So first up, Trails method. So we've got total assessment. Basically, where are you now and where do you want to go? And the only way to know what that is for you is to do some assessments. So all the clients I work with go through 9 different assessments. So think like squats, planks, single leg calf raises. Here we've got a few more examples with the 3-minute step test, a single leg sit to stand, a single leg bridge, and then dorsiflexion, which is your ankle range of motion test. So there's going to be a link coming out in email with these different tests, and we'll talk about these a little bit later as well, as far as like how you can use them and how important they are. But essentially, the 3-minute step test is geared toward figuring out your resting, working, and recovery heart rate. So it just tells us how efficient your cardiovascular system is. If that's an area you need to spend a little bit of time training before you leave for your hike. The single leg sit to stand is great at helping to determine how you're going to hike downhill. It measures quad strength, glute strength, and hamstring strength. And you're basically just standing up with one leg from a chair that's 16 to 18 inches high. So the test itself is simple, but maybe not easy. And then the single leg bridge is great for glute and hamstring strength, which is awesome for any kind of climbing that we need to do. We'll get into what a good score would be and some exercises to correct that later on as well. And then the ankle dorsiflexion is kind of a bonus one I threw in there. This one's really important. We'll talk about why later, but it does have a pretty big impact on how you perform on trail overall. Resilient foundations. So here we're not looking to just get strong. We want to build from the ground up. So thinking of more like a holistic or like well-rounded approach. So yes, the training needs to have strength, mobility, and breath work to get you ready. But you also need to focus on things like sleep and nutrition and self-care and stress management. Do you have a good support system around you? All of these things are important because they all lean into one another when it comes to optimizing the training time that you've got. If you're not sleeping 7 to 9 hours, your body's not producing the right hormones it needs to help with recovery. As you sleep, that first chunk of sleep, like the first hour, a majority of that time is spent in recovering the muscle tissue and repairing from all the exercise you've done. And as you sleep, that phase shortens and then the brain cycle starts and that gets longer. So the first few hours of sleep are key, and we need to make sure that we're getting enough sleep, enough time for those systems to take place. Nutrition, are you eating enough? Probably not. Getting enough protein? Nope, you're probably not. So making sure you're eating the right things to support all of the effort and intensity you're putting out with the workouts So you're maximizing your time in the gym and not just, kind of wasting time there. Mobility and self-care, Pilates, yoga, basic stretching, any kind of mobility work, you've got to do something for recovery. I think that's super important. And that starts at the beginning and goes all the way through training and out onto the trail. As far as stress goes, there's got to be a way to do stress management. That can be journaling. It can be sitting outside, playing with the dog. I don't know, bubble bath with some Michael Bublé in the background and a glass of wine, like whatever it takes for you to chill out and relax, like do that thing. Super important that we're managing the stress as well, because that adds a big impact on our hormones and sleep as well. And then support. You need to have a lot of support from your partner. Parents sometimes don't really understand what we're doing. If we're younger hikers, this is a pretty fringe sport. And if that support's not there, sometimes that can be stressful for us as well. So making sure we've just got a good, well-rounded place to start. From there, we got adventure specific strength. So here we're looking at kind of training like we hike. So workouts need to be progressive, functional, and tailored to the terrain, or maybe backpack specific demands. So for example, if you're training for the Appalachian Trail, the demands of that trail are far different than you would see on the Pacific Crest Trail, for example. So knowing what those differences are trail-wise, like how that might dictate what training we're doing. So maybe more lower leg ankle conditioning and strength versus like, hey, I just got some long climbs I need to do on the PCT. How can we prep for that? So just having information and knowledge, I can tailor things a little bit more specifically for folks. Programs in general, they need to have a few things to be well-rounded. You have to do squat variations, hinge variations. So think like deadlift type stuff, pushing, pulling, carrying and rotating, and then some single leg work. I throw balance in there too. So all these different aspects cover all the different positions that we move in. And if we're good and well-rounded physically, our risk of injury drops. So important to make sure you're doing all these things and not just going to the gym and doing the stair climber and the leg press and doing some hamstring stuff and then calling it good, and not having some sort of program to follow, or touching these other exercises like a side lunge, for example, or a paleo press, or something that's going to work the rotation side of things. So really important to make sure we're getting all these little pieces tucked into a program. Intelligent conditioning. There'll be another talk we'll do that'll cover a little bit more on conditioning itself and some different workouts, but this part's super important. Most of what hiking is a conversational paced sport, which is great. We don't have to do burpees to train. We don't need to run. We don't have to do sprinting or anything like that. We need to spend most of our time training on the long endurance, low intensity type work. And with that, there is certainly some higher intensity stuff we can get into, hill intervals and those sorts of things to work the different energy systems that we need for hiking. But for the most part, we're in aerobic condition. It should be conversational pace, maybe a couple of short sentences here or there, short word answers if you're really climbing uphill. But our training needs to reflect what we're looking to do on the trail. If we're doing a bunch of sprinting and burpees, that's great. It's a higher intensity, but it may not transfer over nearly as well as doing a long loaded pack carry or some hill intervals or something like that, which is going to transfer much better to the trail once you get out there. So with that, some zone and interval work, a lot of breath work tied into that as well, kind of managing the breathing system, understanding how that works and how that can be beneficial to nose breathe instead of mouth breathe as we get into the higher hills. And then one really common mistake I see with hikers is with their training hikes. So a lot of times folks will come to me and say, hey, look, I'm going to hike with a 35-pound pack. So I loaded it up. I'm going to do 5 miles this week and then 6 the next week and 7 and then 8 and then 9 and keep that pack weight the same. And what happens a lot of times is injuries come up. That's a lot of load, that 35 pounds to add onto your body, and then ask it to hike progressively longer distances. And the way we get around that is by progressing the distance or time and the pack weight simultaneously. So maybe you can comfortably hike 8 miles now. Great. We're going to keep 8 miles and then do a pack that's 10 to 15% of your body weight. And then each week add 10 to 15% pack weight and 10 to 15% distance. So we can progress both of those together. It's much less stress on the body. It's a much better way to train and prepare, and drastically reduces your risk of injury. So I think just having a good plan when it comes to building up that pack weight and the mileage together is really key. Lifestyle integration. So this one, it could be the most perfect program, but if it's not going to fit your schedule, it's not going to work for you. And there's a couple of things that are really important to note here. The sleep, the stress management, nutrition, and mindset, all that stuff integrates into this lifestyle aspect as well. And it, like I said, if the workouts aren't going to fit your schedule, if someone just hands you a program and it's perfect on paper, but it's like 5 days a week, you're doing an hour-long workout, and then you got a long hike on Saturdays, man, it's going to be hard to find time to do that with a work-life balance and family and everything else going on. So if you can find a program that more fits your schedule and dovetails into your life, the odds of you sticking with it and being consistent are much greater, and you're going to get the results you're looking for. With any program, you want to make sure that you're not stopping and starting and losing momentum. And if the workouts fit your lifestyle, it's much easier to stay committed to that program. I also find that hikers that have a specific goal. So if you're doing the Pacific Crest Trail, you've got a permit and a start date. Awesome. You've got a date on the calendar. You know how many days until you leave. That is super motivational instead of like, I don't know, I think I'm going to do like the AT and maybe I'll leave like, I don't know, like end of March. Too vague. Get specific with that goal, put it on the calendar and have that date to anchor things to. That's what's going to help keep you consistent. And then sustainable self-care. So kind of knowing your limits, knowing how to recover, which is going to keep you hiking longer. And for this, we're looking for a lot of different things, right? So are we doing any pre and post hike warm-ups? Are you doing any recovery during your rest stops? Are you doing any recovery when you get to camp at night? Maybe your strategy is to wake up at sunrise, have a lazy morning, eat breakfast, and then just crash into camp at night. And you're so tired, you just set up the sleeping bag and go to bed without dinner. It's not going to set you up for success the next day. Much better to have some time in the day where you can stop and take consistent rest breaks, do some quick mobility. I've got some rest stop recovery routines that I give my clients. So you can basically eat food and do some recovery at the same time, which is awesome. Always makes those next few miles run a lot better. And then when you get to camp, there's another great routine you can do as your water's boiling, your food's cooking. So you can stay on top of some of this self-care stuff. Through hiking is usually a war of attrition. And if you can stay on top of the things that slowly take hikers out, you're going to be much better off. Nothing worse than getting to the finish line with the wheels falling off and your wagon's on fire versus like walking across, feeling pretty good and kind of ready for whatever's next. So there's two very different scenarios in what that looks like. And it usually comes down to the self-care and nutrition, that side of things, as far as what the end of your hike is going to look like. Now, on the nutrition side, yeah, you got to eat to perform, eat to recover. There's a lot of great resources out there. Backcountry Foodie is awesome at a lot of ultralight recipes that are well balanced, and she's done all the calculations for you. So awesome resource there to make sure you're getting lightweight, calorie-dense foods in that tip the scale more toward the nutritious side than ramen bombs, which are, let's face it, just paste. So not good. And not as helpful in helping you recover either. A lot of the brain chemicals that come down to happiness, so like serotonin and dopamine, are produced in the stomach. And if we're not eating a lot of fermented foods and dark leafy greens and healthy foods, that balance gets upset. And that can impact us, especially when we come off trail. So post-trail depression can crank up if we're not eating well. So having some options and some ways to eat as healthy as you can while you're in town, and then do the best you can while you're on trail definitely helps on that long run. Especially as we age, I think that nutrition piece becomes more important. If we're in our 20s, we'll probably buffer that a little bit better. But I think with age comes wisdom and being able to eat and leverage the tools to our resources better, like Backcountry Foodie, or knowing our preferences or how many calories we need, those sorts of things. Mindset, it's not all physical out there. A lot of times that first half of the hike or first quarter of the hike is great. And then the honeymoon wears off, and then it's eat, sleep, hike, repeat. And it can get really, really draining. So it's important to have a good mindset around your hike. There's a lot of good resources out there. I know Chickpea has some really good resources she's putting out on how to manage mindset. There's a lot of stressors out there: bugs, weather, food, injury issues, family issues, bugs again, weather again, how many miles till resupply, those sorts of things. All of that can play into our emotions and how we're feeling. So being able to stay neutral for a lot of those events is really key. Pacific Crest Trials by Zach Davis and Carly Moree is an awesome resource. So definitely look into that. I went through that book for each of the thru hikes that I did, came up with a list and kept it in my phone. If I needed to fall back on it, or if I was ever like, this day just sucks, I had that list to fall back on. And it was really helpful to be like, okay, yep, I'm kind of refocused and ready to go from there. So definitely recommend that book. And then recovery habits that stick. So are you doing stuff in your training and in your actual hike? They're going to help you to check in with your tissues, make sure you stay on top of self-care, doing some mobility work while you're out there, and not just saying, it's fine, I'm good. Like we've got to do some self-care to make sure that we're taking a kind of a self-inventory on what's hurting, what aches and pains we're having, how are my feet, how's this blister, is my knee feeling okay? You've got to have some routines around that, which is super important for staying healthy in the long run. As far as like the hiker hierarchy of needs, the order here matters. So sleep is the bottom line. Sleep is the biggest thing you need to do to make sure that your body is recovering. That's going to help with hormones. It's going to help with hunger. It's going to help with recovery. You need 7 to 9 hours of restful sleep per night. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're setting yourself up for lots of different cravings. Your blood sugar is not where it needs to be. Physically, the trail feels harder. There was an interesting study that came out with some cyclists. They had the control group, which got to sleep there 7 to 9 hours, and then they had the test group, and they were interrupted constantly throughout the night. Each group cycled the same section of road. The group that had less sleep always rated the climb harder than the group that had more sleep. So the takeaway there is if you're not sleeping enough, the hike is going to feel harder than it should, and that's going to play into the mindset piece as well. So making sure we're doing a solid by getting enough sleep on the trail. Calories, quantity and quality matter here. So a lot of times for hikers, it's eating whatever they can get in. It's a lot of candy. Yeah, there's a time and a place for those things. Mike and X are my go-to when I got a long climb and I just need a little boost. It's a quick instant sugar, like that candy. So perfect. That's going to help get me up that long climb. But in real life, I never have Mike and X. So I think when you're at home, it's, lean meats, it's dark leafy greens, vegetables, some fruit, little starch, little sugar. Kind of the opposite of a trail diet is what you want while you're working out and training. When you get on trail, trying to carry as many of those things over as you can. As far as the stress piece goes, we've talked about a few things there. This can be stress around leaving your job, leaving your family, leaving your friends, leaving your pet. What am I going to do when I come back from my hike? Why is my family freaking out on me because I'm doing this hike? There's lots of different stressors that we're going to come across outside of the hike itself, which has us wondering, am I going to make it? Like, what's it going to be like? Am I going to find hikers I enjoy? Like, what's the weather going to be like? I'm scared of bears. Why is this mouse chewing in my tent? There's lots of little things that can come up. So being able to manage the stress beforehand and while you're on trail is really going to matter. The mobility piece we've talked about a little bit. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of our body. Hiking is a sport that keeps us kind of moving in one direction. So we need to make sure that we're stretching in all different directions. So taking care of our ankles, knees, and hips at the end of the day, making sure we're doing some stuff for the upper body, especially if we have any like shoulder issues from our pack. There's some really great recovery stuff you can do there just to make sure you're staying on top of those systems and not letting anything accumulate to the point where there's going to be some sort of an ache or a pain that's going to derail your hike. Strength, you would think this would come earlier in the list, but it doesn't. These other 4 things we talked about really do support the strength side of things. If you're getting enough sleep, your stress is under control, you're eating enough calories, and you've got good mobility and you're taking care of yourself there, then strength is next up. We're making sure that we're doing the right exercises. So general things like we talked about, the squat, hinge, push, pull, rotate, single leg work. But with that, making sure we're doing hiker specific exercises. So think like hip to foot. Are we doing some foot exercises to make sure our feet are going to be in good shape? Are we exercising the hips enough to make sure that supports the feet? Are we protecting our knees? Are we doing enough for the lower leg stuff? So toe raises and calf raises and those sorts of things that do have a big difference on how well our body can manage the stress. Strength training is stress for the body, but it needs a certain amount of that stress to then make the changes to help you be more resilient on trail. So if you're thinking, well, I'm a server now and I walk 10,000 steps a day and like that's my training, that's not enough. Because if you've been a server for 2 years, your body's used to that 10,000 steps per day. You need to go beyond that now or change it somehow by adding load, which stresses your body differently, which is going to make the tissues change in the way that you need them to change. Muscles turn over a lot quicker as far as recovery goes. Ligaments and tendons need 6 to 7 months of training for a complete regeneration cycle. So you need to be consistent with your strength training in that 6 to 7 months to get the most benefit out of that. If you're inconsistent or you take a break in there, you're going to lose some of that progress and it's not going to be quite as robust coming out the other side. So training wise, making sure we're giving ourselves the right loading and then supporting that with sleep, stress management, calories, and all those things to get the most out of that training. Skill side, this can be some like balance specific work. This comes down to like the training hikes itself, like being on uneven terrain and those sorts of things. So it's kind of like the very top of the pyramid, and sleep would be the bottom of the pyramid. Um, I think if we're looking like zooming out, a lot of hikers think, oh, I just need to do more miles. Like I need to train with more miles, and that's going to fix everything. And that's not really accurate. If we look at the halfway anywhere surveys that come out each year, most hikers say that they will hike to train, which makes sense. You have to do some of that. But if that's the sole focus of your training, it's not working because injuries are still the number one reason that hikers are coming off trail, or it's one of the top three. It kind of depends on the year. Sometimes it's wildfire, sometimes it's mindset. There's other things that can come up. But generally speaking, training is going to be the one thing outside of mindset that's going to keep you on trail longer. So it's smart training. It's doing the weight and strength training in combination with the training hikes and loaded pack work. How many times have we all said, I'll stretch later? You're not going to stretch later. Like it needs to be when the workout's done or in the workout, those sorts of things. You've got to take time to do that piece, whether it's in training or on your hike. When you get to camp, taking those few minutes to do some stretching and some self-care, it's probably going to be fairly intuitive what you need to stretch. If it's hips or calves or whatever, then spend time and do that. Don't just say I'll do it later, or I'll do it before I get up in the morning. It's not going to happen. Like do it when you think of it. Under fueling while chasing volume or big miles. So whether you're on trail or at home, like I said, you're probably not eating enough protein. As far as protein goes, figure about 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if I'm 190 pounds, I'm trying to get 190 plus calories or grams of protein in per day. Sounds like a lot because it is, but that's what we need to support and maintain muscle mass that we have. If we're looking to build muscle, it's going to be a little bit more, and then our carbs need to adjust there as well. So making sure you're eating enough fruits and vegetables, dark leafy greens, good quality protein to get that up to support all the mileage that you're going to be doing in training and on the trail. More miles is not the answer, is the key there. And then prioritizing the wrong thing. So a lot of hikers will prioritize gear and they're thinking, well, this jacket's 2 ounces lighter and I need to get this jacket. Nope, it's not the jacket. Prioritize the training. Again, not prioritizing mileage, not skipping recovery, like doing the things that matter the most, doing the mindset work, spending time being consistent with training and having a program that's going to fit for you is what's going to tip the tides. So as far as your bottleneck goes, so this is where we got these different assessments set up for you. THRU-r is going to send these out in the email. There's going to be a link for each of these. There's a video that'll walk you through what we're doing. These are just 4 of the 9 assessments that I run my clients through. The 3-minute step test, like we talked about, should take about 3 minutes to do the step test itself, but there's a few minutes with setup on the front end. So I think it's a 12-inch step height, and then there's a metronome. So it's a specific beat that you're stepping up to for 3 minutes. So you take a heart rate before you start. You'll do the 3-minute stepping, take a heart rest there. That's your working heart rate, and then rest a minute and then retake your heart rate. And that's going to give you your recovery. Ideally, we've got a 20 to 30 beat drop from that working heart rate to the recovery. So for example, if you've got a resting heart rate of 60, you do a step test and you jump up to 100 beats per minute, and then you drop down to 70. Perfect. We're in that 30 beat range for the recovery. So that's a good solid base there. So I think that's a good thing to shoot for. If your working heart rate is really high, and in the chart that I've sent Cheer, it'll break down like your age range and what your heart rate should be for working, and then recovery as well. So you've got some guidance there. But looking to make sure we've got a heart rate that's as low as it can be for the resting, the working, and the recovery is going to be important. Single leg sit to stand, ideally about 25 per leg. These numbers, I've trained hundreds and hundreds of hikers. These are the numbers that seem to be like most optimal for getting out on trail and being in good shape. If you hit some of these numbers already, great. There's still an opportunity to continue building on that. So if you hit like 25 single leg sit to stands on each side, awesome. But no, there's still work to be done there. The single leg sit to stand is usually one that scores pretty low for folks. They're maybe not able to get many, if any at all, because it is difficult. It's not a movement that we do very often. So think like a single leg squat coming up from a chair. One thing that's nice about these assessments as well is if you've got a big imbalance from right to left side, that can be an indicator of possible injury risk. So if I did say 14 single leg sit to stands on the right and 7 on the left, that 7 discrepancy is going to be a fair amount I want to clear up. So trying to get that left side to come up to the right and then build both up from there. So important to make sure we're doing that. Single leg bridge, same thing, 25 per side, I think is a good number to shoot for. More is obviously better, but I think 25 is kind of that good tipping point for where I'd like to see hikers at least through their training. For both of the sit to stand and the single leg bridge, there are some exercises, suggestions I got for you in the resources. So if you come up a little bit short on those assessments, don't worry. I've got some options for you to train those sessions, those assessments. And then ankle dorsiflexion. So we talk about ankle range of motion because it's pretty important. So 4¼ inches equates to about 40 degrees, which is where we'd like to be for ankle dorsiflexion. The test will walk you through the setup. It's pretty simple. You just need a wall and a tape measure. So it's pretty easy to do. But if your ankle dorsiflexion is under where it needs to be, so say you're at 34 degrees, so maybe like 3¼ inches, your knee from the wall, that gives you about a 5-time increased risk of ankle sprains, which is not good. And if there's more than a 5-degree difference between the right and left side, your risk of injury also increases. So making sure we've got good, adequate ankle dorsiflexion is really going to reduce a lot of injury risk for you out on trail. There are some exercises in there and some mobility drills for you to improve your ankle dorsiflexion if it's not quite where it needs to be. Okay. So does the Trails method work? Yep, works pretty good. So in the last 4 years, my clients have hiked over 70,000 miles injury-free, which is wild. My clients have an amazing completion percentage on the PCT, the AT, and the CDT. Around 75% of my clients finish their hike. Currently, these specific trail bodies put completion around 25%, which is not so good. Numbers are really hard to come by. All the stats that I use come from Halfway Anywhere and its yearly survey. The AT puts out a little bit of information, and the CDT is working on getting better there as well. But just know your odds of finishing are not great, and a lot of it comes down to the training piece itself. So if you can train well to prepare, you're physically ready, you're mentally ready, your odds of finishing are much greater. And I think the method I put together really works, as proven by the numbers here. And I understand the needs of a hiker because I am one. I know exactly what it takes physically, nutritionally, and mentally to get through some of these long hikes, and get through the phase or the type 2 fun. There's type 3, type 4, they go on from there, but just knowing how to manage those issues as they come up is really key. All right. So I did, I recognize that a lot of times one-on-one training can be pretty expensive, and that can be a barrier for folks. And I know that the cost of through hiking itself has gone up each year. I think last year for the PCT hikers said it was over 10 grand to do the hike, which is wild. And sometimes that cost then takes away from other parts of preparation, like training itself. I put together a group and ran a group type training. I ran some clients through the summer, and they did awesome. The nice thing about the group training is it's the same foundation, same assessments and everything that I run my one-on-one clients through. The workouts are structured pretty similar to those. It's more of a one-size-fits-all, but there's some customization built in there for you. So it's a guided group format. So there's some cohort dates. So everyone will start on the same date. And I'll have some of that stuff coming up for you. There's a 12 or a 16-week option. So it kind of depends on how long you think you need to prepare. And then those workouts are 30, 45, or 60-minute sessions. You let me know in the beginning what length of workout's going to fit your schedule best. I load that up for you. There's a training hike calculator, so you can program out your training hikes as far as like estimated pack weight and estimated mileage. You plug all the stuff in, and then it gives you your 12 or 16-week training hike program, which is awesome. There's also some additional workouts I throw in there. So if you're sore, you're tired, you're stressed, there's still some things you can do to work out to keep you consistent with your workout and not just stopping and saying, well, I'm hurt, I'm not going to do anything. There's always something to do, and those Plan B workouts are perfect for that. And then for some support there, I do have a weekly readiness survey. So all the clients filled this really quick survey, just lets you know how they're doing. If anything in there pops up as a red flag for me, I reach out to you and just check in and see if you need to adjust or make any changes on your side of things. So I'm still supporting you inside the group. It's just not a custom one-on-one program. There's no private one-on-one check-ins, but that's part of what makes this program affordable and accessible for hikers. So if you want to feel ready to go, confident and supported, this is a great option. If you're coming to the next group, you can ask questions about how your assessments went there, and then make sure I register for the next chat, which is December 13th. We're going to cover load versus capacity and learn what causes injuries and how to reduce your risk. So super important on that front. as most of us are probably going to navigate an injury either before, during, or after our hike.